With the $10 million severance package for my Ice Queen ex-wife, Isabella Vance, I thought I was finally set to retire in peace. My own little slice of heaven out in the country, a place where the only drama was the chickens squawking and the world could just leave me alone. Until a red Ferrari came screaming up my gravel driveway and flattened my best egg-laying hen. Staring at the face that launched 1,000 corporate takeovers, I calmly pulled out my phone. Yeah, 911? I'd like to report a hit and run. The perpetrator is trying to blame me. My name is Ethan Hayes. I'm 26, and my occupation is retired. 3 years ago, I signed a contract with Isabella Vance, the notorious ice queen of the business world. I'd be her husband on paper for 3 years, and she'd give me $10 million. For those 3 years, we lived under the same roof, our interactions so frosty you could chill champagne with them. Outside of mandatory family gatherings, I don't think we exchanged more than 100 sentences total. Yesterday, the contract expired. The divorce was clean, and the money hit my account faster than a stock market crash. I packed my bags that night, took my $10 million windfall, and drove out to this mountainside property I'd bought ages ago on the outskirts of Asheville. I call my new home Serenity Ridge. It had mountains, a creek, a field, and Wi-Fi. What more could a man want? A flock of free-range chickens pecked around the yard, a big golden retriever lounged on the porch, and a few fat koi swam in the pond. I was stretched out in a rocking chair in the yard, sipping an ice-cold Coke and enjoying the mountain breeze. I'd reached the pinnacle of existence. This is the life? I muttered to myself. Forget CEOs and hostile takeovers. This is what it's all about. I closed my eyes, soaking in the hard-won tranquility, already mapping out the next 30 years of doing absolutely nothing. Bugock. A blood-curdling squawk ripped through the air. It was followed by the screech of expensive tires biting gravel and the hiss of a sudden stop. I shot up from the rocking chair like I'd been zapped. There, parked at an impossibly arrogant angle across my driveway, was a flashy red Ferrari. Under its front bumper was my best speckled hen, now a dearly departed poultry puff with feathers scattered everywhere. My blood pressure shot through the roof. What the hell? Who drives a supercar up a mountain road? Don't they know the speed limit is 20 miles per hour? That hen laid 2 eggs a day. Double yolkers. The driver's side door swung open. A long, slender leg wrapped in black silk emerged first, followed by a 10-inch Jimmy Choo heel that landed squarely in a fresh pile of cow manure. I watched the obscenely expensive shoe sink slightly into the muck. Then, a face I'd hoped to never see again for the rest of my life leaned out of the car. Isabella Vance. Today, she was dressed in a tailored black Chanel business suit, her hair in a severe bun without a single strand out of place. Her makeup was flawless, her expression as frigid as ever, looking less like she was visiting the sticks and more like she was about to ring the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange. Except, right now, her composure had a tiny crack in it, especially when she glanced down and saw the state of her footwear. The glacier was showing signs of a meltdown. She looked at me, her perfect brows furrowed in a tight line, her thin lips parted to utter 2 words. Ethan Hayes. I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Well, if it isn't the CEO herself. To what do I owe the pleasure? Did you come and give me a plaque for Best Invisible Husband of the last 3 years? She ignored my sarcasm, her gaze sweeping over my humble little farmhouse. The disgust in her eyes was practically overflowing. You live in a place like this. I chuckled. What? Did you think I'd take your $10 million, buy a penthouse on Park Avenue, and throw parties every night to remember you by? Get real. My only ambition is to be a professional slacker. My words seemed to choke her. She was silent for a few seconds, then spoke in a tone that expected no argument. Get your things. You're coming back with me. I dug a finger in my ear, pretending I'd misheard. I'm sorry, what? Go back with you? Back where? We went our separate ways yesterday, remember? All accounts settled. You try and get some post-sale customer service? Isabella's eyes turned cold, that familiar look she gave underperforming department heads materializing on her face. Don't argue. Get in the car. I burst out laughing. Ms. Vance, are you confused? We're divorced. Today. I have absolutely nothing to do with you anymore. What gives you the right to order me around? She took a deep breath, clearly struggling to keep her temper in check. I'll say it one more time. Come back with me. I just shook my head, done with the conversation. I turned to go back inside and shut the door. This woman is insane. Thinks the whole world revolves around her. Wait, she called out suddenly. I stopped and looked back at her. She pointed at the feathered corpse under her car, then at her manure-caked heel, and spoke in a tone she probably used for negotiating mergers. I killed your chicken and soiled your property. As compensation, I've decided. I looked at her intrigued. Compensation? All right. That was a prize-winning, top-tier hen. Market price, $5,000. Your shoot desecrated the feng shui of my driveway. So for emotional distress, that's $95,000. $100,000 total. Venmo or PayPal. Isabella's mouth twitched. She clearly hadn't expected that response. She grit her teeth, as if making a monumental decision, and said, word by word, I've decided to stay here until I'm not angry anymore. I just stared. The world went silent. The only sound was the wind rustling through the bamboo grove. I was pretty sure either my ears were broken or her brain was. You what? Stay here? In my place. I pointed at my rustic little house, then at her. Ms. Vance, does this look like the kind of place that can accommodate a goddess of your stature? I don't have a home theater or a golf simulator. There aren't even any streetlights out here, just the sound of frogs and my dog barking. Isabella glanced around, her frown deepening, but her tone was unshakable. I don't care. I'm staying here. With that, she walked to the trunk of her Ferrari and popped it open. Inside were two massive Louis Vuitton suitcases. I was dumbfounded. She came prepared. What's her angle? Is she after my fresh mountain air? Or my terrible cooking? No. I lunged forward and slammed the trunk shut. Absolutely not. Isabella, don't push it. We're done. She looked up at me, and for a split second, her icy eyes flashed with something that looked like vulnerability. I must have been seeing things. If you make me leave, I have nowhere else to go, she said softly. I froze. What do you mean, nowhere to go? What about your mansion? You own like half of the real estate in the city. Her eyes darted away for a second before she sniffed coldly. I sold all. My brain short-circuited. Sold it? Who is she kidding? You think I didn't pay attention for 3 years? Your properties are worth hundreds of millions. You sold them? Like they were a dime a dozen at a yard sale. I saw right through the lie, but seeing her like this, I was actually a little curious. For 3 years, she was always the untouchable queen, high above everyone else. I'd never seen her look so pathetic. Fine, even if you have nowhere to go, get a hotel. You could rent out the entire 4 seasons for a year and not even notice, I reasoned. Hotels aren't safe, she said flatly. Then, Ethan, she cut me off, lifting her head to meet my gaze, her eyes intense. There was a clause in our agreement. In the event of a major personal crisis faced by Party B, you is obligated to provide necessary, non-financial personal security. Did you forget? My brain started racing, trying to recall the contents of that contract, which was thick as a phone book. I think. Maybe. It's possible. There was a clause like that. At the time, I figured it was just some boilerplate nonsense to keep me from bothering her. Who would have thought she'd use it on herself? Damn it. Why didn't I read the fine print? This is like a get-out-of-jail-free card she can use whenever she wants. Esther de Hair. She stared back at me. Our eyes locked in a standoff, the air thick with tension and awkwardness. Just then, old man Miller from next door trudged by, a hoe over his shoulder. He first spotted the obnoxious Ferrari, then the impeccably dressed Isabella, and finally me, looking like I was in the middle of a hostage negotiation with her. Mister. Miller stopped, a gossipy glint in his eye. He shuffled closer and asked in a low voice, Ethan, my boy, is this some of your family from a city? Before I could answer, Isabella spoke up, her voice quiet but clear. Hello, sir. I'm his wife. Mister. Miller's eyes bulged out of his head. My jaw nearly hit the floor. Wife. Lady. We got divorced yesterday. The ink on the papers isn't even dry. Mister. Miller looked Isabella up and down, then looked at me, and finally a look of profound understanding washed over his face. He clapped me on the shoulder. Ethan, son, all couples fight. It happens. But letting your wife get so mad she runs off is on you. Look at her, came all the way from the city to find you. That ain't easy. Now get her inside and make things right. With that, Mr. Miller enthusiastically grabbed the two giant suitcases from the trunk for her. Don't you worry, miss. This place might be a bit rustic, but the air is clean. A couple of days here, and you'll feel right as rain. Isabella, for the first time in history, gave Mr. Miller a small, almost imperceptible smile. Thank you, sir. I just stood there, shell-shocked. I watched in disbelief as Mr. Miller carried her luggage into my yard. Isabella, teetering on her manure-stained heels, followed him in. As she passed me, she whispered in a voice only I could hear, "The contract." I felt like I'd been kidnapped by a 3-year-old contract and a completely bewildering ex-wife. And just like that, Isabella Vance moved in. I gave her the only guest room, which was really just a storage room I'd hastily cleared out. She took one look inside, and when she came out, her expression suggested she'd just inspected a war zone. No ensuite bathroom. Nope. No central air. Nope. Just a window fan that squeaks. What are the sheets made of? Cotton. Target special, $20 a set. Her face grew darker and darker. I, on the other hand, was secretly thrilled. Go ahead and stay. Let's see how long you last. I give you 24 hours before you're crying and begging to go back to your mansion. But I had underestimated her. She didn't say another word. She just silently unpacked a set of silk sheets and a full collection of Hermes toiletries from her suitcase. Watching her line up those fancy bottles on my worn-out bathroom counter, I felt like my humble little farmhouse was being steamrolled by capitalism. That evening, I was out in the yard watering my vegetable garden. Isabella had changed into a different outfit. It was still ridiculously expensive athletic wear, but at least it didn't look as out of place. She walked over, looked at my patch of green, and actually said, "I'll help you." The watering can nearly slip from my hand. "You? Help me? Ms. Vance, are you sure you know the difference between a chive and a blade of grass?" My jab made her cheeks flush slightly, but she stood her ground. "How hard can it be?" She crouched down, reached out a perfectly manicured hand, and yanked out one of my tomato seedlings that I had just planted. She held it up to me, wearing an expression that screamed, "See? I'm so helpful." This weed was getting too tall. It was blocking the sun from the other vegetables. I stared at my poor, innocent tomato plant, my heart bleeding. I took a deep breath and squeezed the words out through my teeth. "Isabella, that's a tomato plant." She blinked, looking from the seedling in her hand to the identical one still in the ground, her face a mask of confusion. They all look the same. I snatched my precious plant back and carefully replanted it, cursing her 1,000 times in my head. "You menace. I got this variety special from the university agricultural program. It's called First Kiss Pink. It hasn't even fruited yet, and you nearly ended its first kiss." I decided to put some distance between us before my garden and my sanity both took a hit. I walked over to the chicken coop to feed my flock. Like a curious puppy, Isabella followed. "What do they eat?" "Bran, cracked corn, and vegetable scraps," I answered curtly. "Oh," she said. Then she pointed at the magnificent rooster strutting around. "Why does he look so angry?" I glanced at the rooster. He was glaring daggers at Isabella, the comb on his head standing straight up. "His name is Attila. He's the king of this coop. His favorite wife was the one your Ferrari turned into roadkill this morning. He's a widower now. Wouldn't you be angry?" Isabella's expression instantly became a mixture of awkwardness and guilt. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Well, I should probably apologize to him." And before I could stop her, she actually walked up to the coop, faced the rooster, and gave a little bow. "I'm very sorry. It was an accident. Cock-a-doodle-doo." As if enraged by her apology, Attila flapped his wings and charged at the fence separating them. Isabella let out a shriek, stumbling backward, her face pale with fright. I stood off to the side, trying my best not to laugh out loud. That's what you get. Now you know why they call them fighting cocks. Watching this titan of industry, who could make Wall Street tremble, get terrorized by a rooster, I felt the resentment I'd been holding on to strangely start to fade. I even kind of wanted to smile. Dinner was the final test. I picked some fresh greens from the garden and took a couple of eggs from the fridge. For dinner, we're having scrambled eggs with spinach. Rice is in the cooker. I dropped the ingredients on the kitchen counter and walked away. "You want to be treated like a princess here? Not a chance. If you want to eat, you cook. I was betting that a woman like her, who had probably never touched a raw ingredient in her life, wouldn't even know how to turn on the stove. Sure enough, about 10 minutes later, a series of loud clangs and bangs echoed from the kitchen, followed by the thick smell of something burning. I ran in to find Isabella standing there, a smudge of soot on her cheek, staring at a smoking pan filled with a blackened, unrecognizable substance. She was holding my spatula, looking completely lost. The flame was too high, she explained in a small voice, like a kid who'd just broken a vase. I looked at my favorite non-stick pan, the bottom of which was now a scorched yellow. The pain was real. Are you cooking or performing alchemy? Ms. Vance, I'm begging you, please have mercy on my kitchen. It was just renovated. I nudged her aside and resigned myself to cleaning up the disaster. She just stood there, quietly watching me. I expertly washed the pan, chopped the greens, cracked the eggs, lit the stove, poured the oil, and started cooking, all in one smooth, practiced motion. In no time, a plate of fragrant, perfectly cooked scrambled eggs and spinach was ready. I put the food on the table and got 2 bowls of rice. She sat across from me, picked up her fork, took a small bite, and slowly put it in her mouth. Then she stopped chewing. My stomach clenched. What's wrong? Did I put too much salt in it? No way. My cooking skills are at a seasoned veteran level. Is it bad? I asked tentatively. She shook her head, then took another bite and another. She ate elegantly, but quickly. Over half the plate disappeared into her stomach. When she was done, she put her fork down, looked at me, and said, very seriously, "Thank you." It was delicious. It was the first time in the 3 years I'd known her that I'd ever heard her say thank you. It was also the first time she'd ever eaten my cooking. Back at the mansion, we always ate separately. She had a personal nutritionist and a chef. I looked at her, under the warm kitchen light. With her makeup gone, her face looked surprisingly soft and beautiful. The impenetrable wall of ice was gone, replaced by something much gentler. The atmosphere suddenly felt strange. Ahem. I cleared my throat, breaking the silence. Glad you liked it. You're on dish duty. She froze, clearly not expecting that. I don't know how. Then learn. I pushed the plates toward her. We don't coddle freeloaders here. She stared at the greasy dishes, her perfect eyebrows knitting together again. Finally, she sighed, picked up the plates, and walked into the kitchen. A few seconds later, there was a loud crash. I leaned back in my chair and didn't move. Let it break. They're $1 a piece at Walmart. Tonight was destined to be a long night. For my dishes. The next morning, I was woken up by a sharp knock 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 on my door. I groggily opened it to find Mrs. Gable from next door, standing there with a steaming bowl of chicken soup. "Mornin', Ethan. You're up," she said, a mysterious grin on her face. "Mrs. Gable? It's early. Is everything okay?" She shoved the soup into my hands and winked. "Well, I figured you might be a little. Tired these past few days. Made you some soup to help you keep your strength up." I looked down at the oily broth, completely baffled. Tired? All I do is eat and sleep. What's there to be tired about? Mrs. Gable leaned in and whispered, "Your wife is a real looker, pretty as a movie star, but she seems like one of those pampered city girls. You be patient with her, you hear? It's like they say, don't let the sun go down on your anger." It finally clicked. The entire town already knew I was hiding a beauty in my house. News travels faster than 5G in this place. I was about to explain when Mrs. Gable added, "Oh, and old man Miller said he saw your wife's red car yesterday. Scared his best cow, so bad she stopped giving milk. You tell her to slow down when she's driving through the village." Okay. I just stood there. I had a feeling my social life, as I knew it, had just died, starting with this bowl of chicken soup. After sending the well-meaning Mrs. Gable on her way, I walked back into the yard with the soup and saw Isabella standing in front of my vegetable garden, staring at it with intense concentration. She was wearing a simple white sundress, her long hair down. In the morning light, she really did look like an angel, if it weren't for the small hoe she was holding. "What are you plotting now?" I asked on high alert. She turned, holding up the hoe. "I am studying, learning to identify the vegetables." I walked over and saw that she was using an app on her phone to scan the plants. The screen read, "Species, bok choy, edible." I facepalmed. using high-tech AI to farm. That's so you, Ms. Vance. All right, class is over. Come get some breakfast, I called to her. Breakfast was simple. Oatmeal, pickles, and some biscuits I'd made yesterday. Isabella stared at the table in silence. No milk or whole wheat toast. Nope. Got soy milk and biscuits, though, I said, pointing to the stove. She eventually picked up a bowl of oatmeal and started eating in small, delicate bites. After breakfast, I was planning to hike up the mountain to check the snares I'd set for rabbits or wild turkeys. To my surprise, Isabella said she wanted to come with me. The trail's rough. You sure? I asked, glancing at her brand-new sneakers. I'm sure. I couldn't argue with her, so I let her tag along. The mountain path was as rugged as I'd warned. At one point, she stumbled and nearly fell. I instinctively reached out and grabbed her arm to steady her. Her arm was soft and cool. My palm felt like it had been burned, and I quickly let go. Be careful, I said, trying to sound casual. Okay, she mumbled, her head down. I couldn't see her expression. The atmosphere got weird again. What is wrong with you? You just helped her. Why is your heart pounding? Get a grip, Ethan. Halfway up the mountain, I checked one of my snares. Empty. Nothing, huh? Isabella asked. Yeah, the critters around here are getting smart. We kept climbing. Suddenly, Isabella stopped and pointed to a thicket of bushes nearby. Something's moving. In there, she whispered. I followed her gaze and saw the leaves trembling slightly. A jolt of excitement went through me. I put a finger to my lips, signaling for her to be quiet, then crouched down and snuck toward the bushes. I parted the branches and froze. It wasn't a turkey or a rabbit. It was two burly guys in black suits, crouched down with binoculars, spying on my house. My stomach dropped. These two were obviously not good news, and they definitely weren't on a corporate retreat. Their target was my house. Or more specifically, Isabella. I immediately pulled her behind a large boulder. What is it? She asked, startled by my sudden movement. Don't make a sound, I whispered, my voice grim. Someone's watching us. Isabella's face went pale. She followed my gaze and saw the two men. Her body started to tremble, her eyes filled with a fear I had never seen before. In that moment, she wasn't the powerful CEO anymore. She was just a scared woman. I saw her clench her fists, her knuckles turning white. It's them, she stammered. Who are they? I demanded. Her lips moved, but no words came out. The fear in her eyes deepened. I sighed internally. Looks like real trouble just showed up at my doorstep. I didn't press her. Now wasn't the time. I scanned the terrain. This way. Follow me, I said, pulling her along. I didn't take the main path back. Instead, I led her down a smaller, hidden trail I used for hunting, one that very few people knew about. Isabella had clearly never been on a path like this. She slipped several times, but clenched her jaw and kept up without a single complaint. Once, her foot slid out from under her, and she was about to tumble down the steep hillside. I reacted instantly, grabbing her and pulling her back. She crashed into my chest. A faint, pleasant scent filled my nose. Her body was soft and light, and she was trembling in my arms. I could feel her heart hammering against her ribs. And my own. It's okay, I said, patting her back, my voice unintentionally gentle. She stayed in my arms for a few seconds before slowly looking up, her eyes red-rimmed. Thank you. Don't thank me. Let's go. We moved quickly, making it back home just before dark. I immediately bolted the door and drew all the curtains. The house was dark, and the mood was heavy. My dog, Buddy, seemed to sense something was wrong. He paced anxiously in the yard, letting out low whimpers. I poured Isabella a cup of hot water. Her hands were still shaking as she held the mug. Okay, you can tell me now, I said, sitting across from her. What's going on? She was silent for a long time, so long that I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then she looked up at me, her voice hoarse. My company is in trouble. She explained that a major competitor had used dirty tactics to turn one of her top executives, stealing core trade secrets and fabricating evidence to frame her for illegal business practices. Now, she wasn't just facing a hostile takeover. She was facing potential prison time. Those men, they were sent by them to find me, she said, staring out the window, her eyes full of exhaustion and despair. They want to force me to sign over my shares. It all made sense now. She wasn't here on vacation. She was here to hide. This woman who seemed invincible had been pushed to the absolute edge. Why didn't you call the police? I asked. She gave a bitter laugh. It's useless. They have a lot of power, and they have the evidence. The second I show my face, I'll be taken in for questioning. Then I'll really be at their mercy. So you ran here? Yes, she nodded, looking at me. In the whole world, the only place I could think of that was completely safe, a place no one would ever think to look, was here, with you. My heart gave a strange little thump. I have to admit, when she said that, all the resentment I'd been holding onto completely vanished. It was replaced by a feeling I couldn't quite name. Part pity, part something else. Damn it. I guess I really am in her debt. I got up, walked to the window, and peeked through a crack in the curtains, scanning the area outside. I could see the faint glow of headlights down on the main road, but they quickly disappeared. What's your plan? You can't hide out here forever, I said, my voice calmer than I expected. I don't know. She shook her head, lost. My phone, my laptop, everything is being monitored. I can't contact anyone I trust. I turned and looked at her at this completely broken version of the Ice Queen, and a crazy idea popped into my head. Maybe I can help. Isabella's head snapped up, her eyes wide with disbelief. You? Her tone was dripping with doubt. That looks stung. What? You looking down on this retired farmer? I raised an eyebrow. Don't forget, this farmer graduated with a computer science degree from a top university. I may have been slacking for a few years, but my brain isn't rusty yet. For 3 years, she thought I was some useless bum living off a small inheritance. She had no idea I'd won the National Collegiate Programming Competition back in the day. It was only after some things happened that I grew tired of the high-stress, fast-paced life and chose to check out early. Isabella was clearly stunned. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. You studied computer science? 100%. I went to my storage room and dug out my old, dusty laptop. It was a beast I had custom-built myself. It looked unassuming, but its performance could rival a professional workstation. I placed it on the table and fired it up. Complex lines of code scrolled across the screen. Tell me everything about your company's network architecture and everything you know about this competitor, I said, my eyes fixed on the screen. Isabella stared at me for a second, then quickly snapped into action, rattling off a stream of company names and technical jargon. Her professional skills were undeniable. Even under this much pressure, her mind was sharp. I listened, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The only sounds in the quiet room were the rhythmic clicking of the keys and her slightly ragged breathing. She stood behind me, watching the screen as incomprehensible strings of characters flowed and shifted like a digital tide. Her expression slowly changed from doubt to surprise, and finally, to utter shock. She had probably never imagined that her useless, on-paper husband had this side to him. 2 hours later, I hit the enter key. Done. I leaned back in my chair and let out a long breath. What? What did you do? She asked nervously. I pointed at the screen and grinned. Nothing much. Just used a little bit of a farmer's ingenuity. I found the original server logs of them, stealing your data. Then I followed the breadcrumbs back to their company's main server and added a little seasoning to their files. What kind of seasoning? Oh, nothing special, I said nonchalantly. I just replaced all their financial reports with the full text of 50 Shades of Grey. And for good measure, I also signed their CEO up for a 1-year cash-on-delivery subscription to Rogaine. Isabella was speechless. She looked at me, her beautiful eyes filled with a complex mix of emotions. Shock, gratitude, and was that a hint of a smile? For the first time, I saw a color in her eyes other than ice. Isabella couldn't hold it in any longer. She burst out laughing. She quickly covered her mouth, but that single, soft laugh was like a stone skipping across a calm lake, sending ripples through my heart. The glacier was really melting. You. She looked at me, trying to speak, but she was laughing too hard. What about me? It was self-defense, I said with a straight face. They mess with your company, I mess with their heads. Seems fair. She laughed for a good while before she finally calmed down, tears of mirth at the corners of her eyes. Ethan, I underestimated you, she said, looking at me seriously. Better late than never, I said, puffing out my chest. You'd better be nice to me from now on. I'm the guy who could change your bank password to I love Ethan. A blush crept up her cheeks, and she shot me a playful glare. That look was Surprisingly charming. My heart skipped a beat, and I quickly looked away. Can't handle it. That smile is lethal. Okay, the evidence is packaged, encrypted, and sent to a secure email address. Your lawyers can take it from here tomorrow, I said, tapping the table to get us back on track. Okay, she nodded, the smile still lingering on her face. Thank you. There you go with the thank you again, I said, waving a dismissive hand. If you really want to thank me, you can pay for room and board. Since you're my ex-wife, I'll give you a 20% discount. Let's say $10,000 a day. So that's, you know what? Just leave the Ferrari. In your dreams, she shot back, rolling her eyes. With the crisis averted, the tension in the room dissipated. I only then realized it had started raining outside. The patter of raindrops on the roof was a soothing, steady rhythm. The room was quiet and warm. Neither of us spoke, just listening to the rain. It was a strange feeling. For the first time in 3 years, we were sitting together in the same space, completely at ease. Ethan, she said suddenly. Yeah. Why? Why did you choose to come here? She asked. With your skills, you could be making top dollar at any major tech company. I was silent for a moment. It was a question I hadn't thought about in a long time. I watched the rain streak down the window pane. Because I was tired, I said softly. I used to be like you. I thought life was about climbing the ladder, making more money, gaining more status. I worked myself to the bone, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night. Until one day, my best friend, my business partner, died of exhaustion. He had a heart attack, right at his desk. He was only 28. I said it calmly, but I knew she could hear the grief underneath. After that, I started to wonder what we're even living for. For money you can never finish spending? For a reputation that doesn't mean anything? Eventually, I figured it out. I just wanted a simpler, easier life. Look at the mountains, grow some vegetables, raise some chickens. It's a good life. After I finished, the room fell quiet again. Isabella looked at me, an expression in her eyes I couldn't quite decipher. I'm sorry, she whispered. What are you sorry for? I used to think you were wasting your life. I smiled. And do you still think that? She shook her head. No, she said, looking right at me, her voice clear and steady. I think you understand life better than I do. The next day, the storm had passed, leaving the sky a brilliant blue. Isabella contacted her lawyers and sent them the evidence. The problem resolved itself quickly. Thanks to my little seasoning, the competitor's company was in chaos. Before their CEO could even worry about his hair loss, the IRS and the SEC came knocking. They were too busy saving themselves to bother Isabella anymore. The two goons who had been watching the house were long gone. The crisis was over, which meant Isabella could leave at any time. I expected her to pack her bags, hop in her Ferrari, and return to her kingdom. But she didn't. Not only did she not leave, she seemed to have gotten comfortable. In the mornings, she'd follow me out to the garden. She still couldn't tell the difference between chives and wheatgrass, but at least she stopped pulling up my tomatoes. At noon, she'd try to help me in the kitchen. Most of the time, she just made a bigger mess, like mistaking the salt for sugar. In the afternoons, she'd pull up a stool and just watch me for hours as I weaved baskets or repaired tools. The townspeople had officially accepted her as my wife. Mrs. Gable would bring over fresh produce every few days and hold Isabella's hand, whispering secrets on how to keep a man happy. Old Man Miller even offered to teach her his family's secret technique for milking a cow. Faced with the villagers' overwhelming hospitality, the former ice queen showed no signs of impatience. She handled it all with grace, even learning to say thank you in the local Appalachian dialect. I watched her in her cheap, floral apron, clumsily trying to feed the chickens. The sun shone down on her, and her smile was brighter than the light. I suddenly thought that this kind of life wasn't so bad. Ethan, you're losing your edge. What happened to your dream of being a slacker? What about your peaceful, quiet life? I silently roasted myself, but I couldn't stop the corners of my mouth from turning up. One afternoon, I was pretending to nap in my rocking chair while Isabella sat nearby, reading a book. Ethan, she said suddenly, that $10 million I gave you, how much have you spent? I didn't even open my eyes. Buying this mountain, building the house, furniture, a truck. All in all, I've probably got around $8 million left. Oh, she said, and then nothing. A few moments later, she asked, so what are your plans for the future? Plans? My plan is to have no plans. Just chill out, live off the land, and enjoy my retirement, I said lazily. What if? She hesitated. What if I wanted to invest in Serenity Ridge? Turn it into a high-end organic farm retreat. What would you think? I opened my eyes and looked at her. Ms. Vance, is your workaholicism flaring up again? You see potential projects everywhere you look. She looked a little embarrassed, but pressed on. I'm serious. This place has so much potential. The environment, the air, the water, the soil, it's all top-notch. With professional planning and management, it could be huge. I looked at her. Her eyes were shining. It was the same light I'd seen when she talked about business deals. Except this time, the light wasn't cold and sharp. It was soft and full of passion. I was silent. Turn my slacker paradise into a business venture. My first instinct was to say no. But looking at her hopeful expression, the word no got stuck in my throat. The day after Isabella proposed investing in Serenity Ridge, a beautifully bound business plan landed on the armrest of my rocking chair. The cover was gold-leafed, the pages filled with professional charts and graphs. From market positioning to profit forecasting, brand packaging to distribution channels, it was a masterpiece of corporate ambition. I flipped through 2 pages and tossed it aside, taking a sip of my Coke. Isabella, are you trying to turn my chicken coop into a publicly traded company? That's a bit much. My hens don't have stock options. She crouched beside me, tapping her finger on the 5 words printed on the plan. Vance Hayes Homestead. Her eyes sparkled. See, I already thought of a name. Vance for Isabella Vance, and Hayes for Ethan Hayes. I nearly choked on my drink. Hold it. I'm not interested in running some kind of mom-and-pop shop with you. The last thing I need is another contract. Please, I'm begging you. She glared at me, momentarily speechless. Then she closed the business plan and played her trump card. Mrs. Gable told me yesterday that her peaches are rotting on the trees because no one's buying them. And Mr. Miller has a whole shed full of honey he can't sell. Can you really stand by and watch them work all year for nothing? I fell silent. I got to know the folks around here. I knew how hard they worked. The thought of all that fruit going to waste didn't sit right with me. Sensing my hesitation, Isabella pressed her advantage. We could just start with a small pilot program. I'll provide the funding, you provide the land. If we make a profit, it all goes to the villagers. If we lose money, it's on me. How about it? Iskin de la Haye. You're the CEO of a massive corporation. What's in it for you? She tilted her head, the sunlight catching in her hair and making me dizzy. The air here is nice. And your scrambled eggs are pretty good. And just like that, she had me. The pilot project started immediately. Isabella's decisive nature didn't change just because she was on a farm. She wore $20 canvas sneakers, trudged through the mud, and started a TikTok live stream without a hint of pretension. Hey, everyone look, these are our Serenity Ridge chickens. They eat corn and bugs, and their eggs have the most beautiful orange yolks. She turned the camera to get a close-up of Attila, the rooster. He, probably still holding a grudge over his deceased wife, flapped his wings and charged the phone. Isabella screamed and nearly threw her phone. I lunged forward, grabbing her arm and pulling her behind me while yelling at the rooster. What's wrong with you? Don't take it out on the technology. The live chat exploded with laughing emojis. El mio, that rooster is savage. The girl is so cute. Protect her, man. This is my dream life. Can I come visit? I looked at the comments scrolling by. Then, at Isabella, who was still catching her breath, her cheeks flushed. I suddenly thought maybe this wasn't so bad. The live stream was a massive success. Orders flooded in. Mrs. Gable's peaches, Mr. Miller's honey, and all of our eggs sold out. The villagers were overjoyed and insisted on throwing a huge dinner for us. That night, my yard was filled with tables of food, all of it homegrown. Mr. Miller, a little drunk, grabbed my hand and tried to give me his family heirloom, a chipped clay pot, as a dowry. Ethan, my boy, Isabella is a keeper. You gotta lock that down. Don't let her get away. Isabella sat beside me, her face glowing red, but she didn't object. She just smiled and looked down. My heart felt like it was being tickled by a feather. After a few drinks, someone started chanting for us to kiss. I looked at Isabella. She looked back at me, her eyes shining. I picked up my glass, about to lean in, when a commotion erupted in the yard. Attila, for reasons unknown, was giving a piggyback ride to a new speckled hen I'd gotten from a neighbor to keep him company, and they were doing victory laps around the tables. I froze. Isabella froze. The next second, we both burst out laughing. Our laughter mingled with the cheers of the villagers and floated out of the yard, drifting into the hills, where it blended with the soft rustle of the wind through the bamboo. The farm's business grew, but Isabella showed no intention of leaving. She even started managing most of her corporate duties from Serenity Ridge. Every morning, she'd sit under the old oak tree in the yard, conducting video meetings in fluent English that even made my dog, Buddy, wag his tail. I thought life would just continue on like this, peacefully, until a black Bentley pulled up to my gate. A man in an immaculate suit got out, his hair perfectly coiffed. He radiated an aura of corporate power. He walked straight up to Isabella, his voice urgent. "Isabella, come back with me. The company needs you." Isabella frowned, cutting him off. "Grant, I've told you already. I'm not going back." Grant Lockwood. I remembered him. Isabella's ex-boyfriend and, at one point, her biggest business rival. Grant's eyes were fixed on Isabella, then flickered over to me with undisguised contempt. "Isabella, hiding out in a place like this with people like him? This is beneath you." I was squatting on the ground, feeding the chickens. I slowly stood up and dusted off my hands. "Sir, you can say what you want, but you'd better watch your mouth." "What do you mean, people like him? My chickens eat better than you do." Grant's face turned beet red. Isabella let out a laugh, walked over to my side, and linked her arm through mine. "Grant, let me introduce you. This is my boyfriend, Ethan." My entire body went stiff. I looked down at the hand on my arm, my heart skipping a beat. Grant's expression soured even more. "Isabella, stop this nonsense. You with him? You're not even from the same world. Whether we are or not isn't for you to decide," Isabella said, her chin held high, her eyes clear. I used to think life was all about climbing higher, about winning. It wasn't until I came here that I realized sitting in the yard, soaking up the sun, and listening to the chickens and dogs can be its own kind of happiness. Grant looked like he wanted to argue, but Isabella was done with him. She pulled me toward the house. "Ignore him. Let's go pick some peaches. They're perfectly ripe today." I let her lead me, my feet feeling like they were floating. From behind us, we heard Grant's frustrated voice. "Isabella, you'll regret this." Without looking back, Isabella waved a hand. "No, I won't." That afternoon, we spent hours in the orchard picking peaches. The sun streamed through the leaves, warm on our skin. A few leaves got caught in Isabella's hair, and I reached over to pick them out. She looked at me and said suddenly, "Ethan, thank you." "Thanking me again?" I picked the biggest peach, peeled it, and handed it to her. "For what?" "Thank you. For showing me that life can be this simple." She took a bite, the sweet juice dripping from her lips. Back at the company, every day was a battle. I was exhausted. But this is nice. I looked at her smiling face, and a thought popped into my head. A bold thought, one that surprised even me. After the farm's business was up and running, Isabella became a permanent fixture at Serenity Ridge. She learned to tell the difference between weeds and vegetables. She learned to feed the chickens, and she even learned to cook pasta, though she still occasionally mixed up the salt and the sugar. The villagers all treated her as my wife, and even Buddy adored her. Only I knew that there was still one thing left unsaid between us. Today was the official grand opening of the Vance Hayes homestead. All the villagers came. The yard was decorated with red lanterns, as festive as Christmas. That night, after the last guest had left, Isabella and I sat on the porch swing, looking at the stars. "That was fun," Isabella said softly. "Yeah," I replied, my heart thumping in my chest. I took a deep breath, mustering all my courage. "Isabella, we should—" Before I could finish, she turned to me. "Ethan, I have something to tell you." I blinked. "You go first." She took a deep breath, her gaze serious. "I've made up my mind. I'm going to turn over the day-to-day operations of my company to a management team. I want to stay here with you. We can farm, raise chickens, and live our lives together." I stared at her, a lump forming in my throat. I couldn't speak. Seeing my silence, she started to look anxious. "You don't want to? It's okay, I can." "Edo." I cut her off, my voice trembling. I reached in my pocket and pulled something out. It wasn't a diamond ring, but a small ring I had woven from a thin reed of bamboo the night before. I got down on one knee, held up the little ring, and looked in her eyes. Isabella Vance, 3 years ago, we signed a contract. I'd be your husband on paper, and you'd give me $10 million. Now, I want to sign a new, lifelong contract with you. No money, no clauses, just me and you. Will you marry me? Under the moonlight, Isabella's eyes were shining, as if they held all the stars in the sky. She didn't say a word. She just held out her hand, letting me slide the rough, handmade ring onto her finger. Then, she threw her arms around me and burst into tears. "Ethan, you idiot." I held her tight, patting her back, grinning like a fool. Buddy nudged against our legs, Attila crowed from his coop, and the sound of frogs croaked in the distance. The wind rustled through the trees. I knew my life of peaceful retirement had been completely derailed, but it didn't matter. With her here, even if it meant doing live streams and tending to a bunch of animals every day, it was a pretty happy life. Epilogue: a day at the homestead. 1 year later, the Vance's homestead had become a famous tourist destination, with visitors coming from all over. But Isabella and I still preferred our quiet life in the yard. In the mornings, I'd wake up to Attila's crowing and the sight of Isabella in a floral apron, trying her best not to ruin breakfast. "Ethan, I put too much salt in the oatmeal again." "Serve you right for keeping the salt and sugar in matching jars." At noon, we'd sit under the old oak tree and mind the farm stand. Tourists would take pictures of us. Isabella would greet them with a smile, and I'd sneak a peeled peach slice in her mouth. In the afternoons, we'd work in the garden. Isabella would still sometimes pull up a carrot instead of weed, but it was okay. I would patiently show her the difference. At night, we'd lie back on the porch swing, watch the stars, and just talk. Isabella would rest her head on my shoulder and ask, "Do you regret it? Giving up your peaceful retirement to build this farm with me?" I'd squeeze her hand and smile. "Regret what? I used to think doing nothing was the pinnacle of life. Now I know that having you by my side is the real pinnacle." She'd blush and playfully punch my arm, then bury her head in my chest. Buddy would be sleeping at our feet, snoring softly. The chickens and ducks in the coop would be quiet. The moonlight would blanket the yard, shining down on the sign that read Vance's Homestead, impossibly gentle. I knew, without a doubt, that this was the life I wanted. The mountains, the creek, the fields, and her. It was more than enough. End.